I've got PUP first. I don't know if you want to start with PUP.
I think PUP is first, actually.
Okay, so this is The Unravelling of Pup the Band, the fourth full-length release from Toronto punks PUP. PUP are made up of Stefan Babcock on lead vocals and rhythm guitar, Steve Sladowski on lead guitar, Nestor Shumak on bass and keys, and Zach Michaela on drums and percussion, and the whole band provide backing vocals at key moments in the songs. If you listen to our favourite albums of all time episodes, then you'll remember that PUP's third album, Morbid Stuff, snuck its way onto my list at number 20, which, given it had been out for less than a year at that point, is pretty insane. But on that album, I was particularly taken by the band's knack of just crafting song after song, rammed full of hooks and sing-along moments, combined with a sort of ramshackle drive and energy that just never failed to put a smile on their face. And the kind of lyrical content was both morose, morbid, and humorous at the same time, which is, I just find to be really engaging. So Morbid Stuff was my entry point to PUP. Their previous two albums are also excellent, and with the This Place Sucks EP that came out in 2020 also being a belter, this new album has got a lot to live up to. Have you got any prior sort of experience with PUP?
I haven't, man, and I'm kicking myself now after listening to this album, to be honest, because if their previous albums are anything like this, then they're bound to be great. Much like you were just saying there about, the third album, there's so much hooks in this album. It's littered all over the place in terms of the kind of musical arrangements, the way they deliver the vocals and lyrics themselves. It's a brilliant album.
Yeah, like this one doesn't open as swiftly as like the title track of Morbid Stuff did. It instead kind of opens with 4 chords, which is like peppered throughout the album. There's like a little kind of sort of story going on there, and there's a few sort of interlude tracks, and the opening song, 4 chords, transforms from this like little lilting piano driven number into like a massive kind of bombastic theatrical piece. And there's like a really funny moment in there where Stefan hits this bum chord, just before the kind of song takes off, and he's like, "Oh fuck!" And it just perfectly typifies their sense of humour, and it's a great way to start the album. But that kind of sets the scene for Totally Fine, which is kind of kicking into like a proper pop banger that's got all the sort of trademarks that I've grown to love, and the thundering drums, the squealing guitar lines, these crunching punk riffs, and these kind of massive shout along gang vocal moments that they just make you just want to sing and get involved with. And actually the last minute of that song goes a bit more theatrical and reminds me a bit of like Creeper's Sex, Death and the Infinite Void. So it's like, that's quite a cool way to end the song.
Yeah, I never actually thought of that, but now that you mention it, I can see that. I can see that.
Yeah.
I thought there was so much going on with these songs, man. Like, and I don't know, I really didn't know what to expect. From Totally Fine, the second track, we go into Robot Writes a Love Song, which is probably one of my favourite songs on the album. I think it was released as one of the singles as well.
It was, yeah.
It's really quite distinctive. There's a bit of a kind of tonal change there from the kind of first song. It has some really interesting kind of laid back electronic drum beats in there, particularly kind of during the first verse section of the song, which for my money almost kind of felt as if it had like a bit of a kind of Supertramp-esque vibe to it. The song kind of builds momentum and becomes kind of more textured. Like, I mean, there really is a lot going on there underneath the surface. Lyrics are really interesting as well. It kind of talks about somebody dying, I think, and then build like sort of like reloading somebody's consciousness back up onto a computer or back up onto a machine, which I thought was quite cool, quite interesting to listen to.
Yeah, this is one of my favourite songs on the album for all the reasons you've mentioned, and like the lyrics that go, "Oh, the first time I saw you, I confess, you nearly put me in a cardiac arrest. It was way too much data to process." And later on, there's the bit that goes, "Black Hole Sun on 102.1 FM. I think I'm going to self-destruct if I ever hear that song again." I think PUP's lyrics are just brilliant, and I can totally relate to not wanting to hear Black's Whole Sun ever again, because I remember when I was at school, that was on like constantly, like every day. Like you come home from school and like put on the music channels, and Black Hole Sun was always on, and like I used to love it, but it's just, yeah, I don't want to hear it ever again. But yeah,
played to death.
But yeah, Robot Writes a Love Song. What a brilliant song that is. And it's so weird, like that sort of woozy, kind of jangly guitar riff that opens it up, like and repeats through the song. It's just so unusual, and to the point where, like, when it was released as a single, I was like, I'm not sure about this. Like, it's not. I wasn't sure if it was really pop, but it absolutely is pop. it's strange.
I've got nothing to compare it to. I've got no real, frame of reference, because I think in my mind they were just going to be a straight up punk band, but they're anything but. You know what I mean? And I suppose, we've kind of said it time and time again. You can't really categorize people or bands in that way.
No, totally. And now that I listen to that song, I'm like, I can't believe I thought that kind of thing. It's a weird, like, why, it was odd that I thought that, but at the time I think it's just because the band are developing their sound in such a way, which is always good for bands to do. They just develop their sound rather than stick to, churning out the same thing over and over again. So, so it's always a good thing when it works out like that. What about Matilda? How do you feel about Matilda?
Yeah, I mean, again, it was another real standout track for me. As I said before, there's so much kind of hooky elements. That vocal refrain during the kind of chorus, maybe kind of pre-chorus section of "But I Was Everything You Need," for me, it just kind of really drew me in. Yeah, and I really enjoyed it as well.
You know the story behind that song?
No, I don't.
So I only know this because when this was released as a single, there was a bit of stuff about it, and it's basically a love letter to Stefan, the singer's old busted up guitar. The story is that Matilda was his favourite guitar, and it was a gift from a friend because he broke the only guitar he had, like, in the middle of a long tour, and he didn't have enough money to buy a new one. So this, it was a big thing. This guy gave him this guitar, and he ended up playing it for like 7 years at every PUP show. But then the rest of the band started complaining that the guitar sounded like absolute shit. So eventually had to phase the guitar out and replace it with a good guitar, and he kind of was able to get the rest of the band to agree for Matilda to come back on this album and this song for like one last hurrah. So the whole song is like a love story to Matilda, but Matilda's a guitar. So it's like, you mentioned that those lyrics where it goes, locked in the corner collecting dust, patiently waiting while my fingers rust, which just, I think, is really clever lyrics. But the song is basically a love song between a man and his old guitar that he doesn't play anymore. And in an interview with Guitar World, he said, I played her during the bridge of this song. Sounds so shitty, but good shitty. Great shitty. For me, it was the most joyful and cathartic moment in the entire making of this record. And you can hear at this sort of 2-minute 30 mark. It's like in the bridge at the 2-minute 30 mark, like it's just sort of, he's just like strumming it in the background, and it does sound shitty, but it is great shitty, I think. And there's this sort of cool, like, ballooning guitar solo over the top of it. It just sounds really cool. But that's the story behind Matilda. It's just a love song between a man and his old guitar.
I would never have known. Never have known.
No, I mean, there was no reason why you would know that. I don't think it's. Maybe you could pick it up through the lyrics. I don't know if you could, but that's what it's about. And you mentioned, like, there's hooks and things all over this album. I mean, this song, it's got like 2 choruses, and some bands can't even write one good chorus, and PUP have got 2 great choruses in one song. And it's just like, it's insane. I mean, you go through every song on this and be like, it's pretty much a standout song. Like, Relentless has got this really cool moment, like, sort of close to the 2-minute mark, which goes, fuck all the dread, it's endless. That's guaranteed to become like a massive, like, moment live. Like, imagine the crowd roaring that back at the band. And then, like, the final third of that song goes full on, like, Walkman worship. You remember that song, The Rat? Yeah. The whole, like, last third of that song is like just worship to the Rat. It's so good. And you've got Waiting, which is a bit heavier and angrier than some of the other songs. It's more closer to stuff from like the This Place Sucks Ass EP, which was all really quite angry.
But by the same token, that again, there's a kind of tonal change within that song as well, because I would agree, you know, I've written in my notes that it kind of opens with this kind of foot stomping, grunting guitar riff, but then laterally it does give away to this kind of really uplifting and infectious kind of choral section with the gang vocals of them all singing "Waiting."
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the chorus is like, really quite
a reprieve
poppy.
Almost.
Yeah, it's really poppy by comparison to like that sort of angry opening. And then there's some female backing vocals on there, and I did a little bit of digging, and it's Catherine McCoy, who is in the band Nobro, who do a song called Eat Slay Chardonnay, which was in the playlist last time round, and it's just like, they're just a really cool punk band, and Eat Slay Chardonnay just goes, Eat Slay Chardonnay. It's absolutely brilliant. So that's Catherine doing the backing vocals here from Nobro. Habit's a weird one. I've written here it's got the most experimental opening of any song. It's got electronics and synths, a little bit like Robot Writes a Love Song, and it's got lots of cool bass lines and kind of squealing guitar parts and just riffs all over the place. And that's followed by Cutting Off the Corners, which is...
Oh, sorry, before you move on to Cutting Off Corners, I think Habits probably has like one of my favourite lyrics. Again, another really hooky bit from the album. I think you maybe hear it twice. It's just the lyric that I told you I'm doing just fine, but to tell you the truth, I feel like total shit whenever I'm with you. And it's just the kind of gang vocals that come in for just those last 2 or 3 words that just brings it to a whole new level. And it's just like, it just hits so hard or slaps so hard. Like, it's just brilliant.
Yeah, like, there's just moments like that all over the album. Cutting Off the Corners, I've written as complete genius.
Yeah, it's a brilliant track.
I've said it's a quietly beautiful power ballad. I don't know if it's really a power ballad, but it's sort of ballady. It's like a punk ballad, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. It's probably a bit more serious as well than some of the other tracks, isn't it? Because is it dealing with somebody passing, or I've got a feeling that they talk about, is it somebody going for chemo or something? I really can't remember.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure about that, but it definitely tugs at the heartstrings just in the way that it kind of rises and surges. I think the ability of the band to do a song like this, like such a sort of powerful and dramatic song, and with this like really amazing solo at the end, and still kind of sound like a shitty punk band at the same time. I think that's really cool. Like, quite unique, I think. I don't know if you had the same thought, but on the song Grim Reaping, like the bass tone on that really reminded me of Honingbarna, like on the Animorphs record, like the super like satisfying like grunt in the bass. And weirdly, I mentioned Honingbarna, and there's also trumpet at the end of the song, which reminded me of Genie, which we reviewed on the same episode. So it was it was just a weird coincidence there. Final song, Pup the Band Inc. is filing for bankruptcy. Quite anarchic, angular guitars, fuzzed up riffs, gang vocals. The bit at the 2-minute mark where there's like, where he sort of goes ba 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 ba, like I really like that. And then there's like this mental shrieking saxophone that comes in, and then like a stripped back acoustic gang vocal part. And some of my favourite lyrics are there. There's no place I'd rather be instead, even though everybody here is fucked in the head. It's a great line. Yeah, it's a good way to end the album. And we said before, there's these little kind of interludes that talk about, it's almost like talking about the recording process and how it's been like done by committee, and the board of directors are sort of driving
orderly meetings. Yeah, because I think like in the first song, that 4-chord song, as you said, I suppose it's a bit of a song into how the kind of album was created. It's quite tongue-in-cheek. I think one of the lyrics is that, we've spent all the company money on something that nobody wanted.
I think on the second one of those interludes, 4 chords part 2, they're sort of condemning this music by committee approach, and and into this beauty. So we vote on the issues, like, are we tuning the vocals? I say no, and I vote to end democracy in this fucking band. This is brilliant. Like, I love that kind of morbid humour that you find all over pop songs. So, I mean, I'm fully in love with this. I think PUP are a band that, in a similar way to, like, Turnstile, not musically, but like the progression between their albums, they kind of take the sort of best elements of their sound and they sort of maximize them and sort of stretch them and like add to them and make something that's familiar but surprising at the same time. I mean, my reaction to Robot Writes a Love Song is a prime example of that. And brand new's maybe a bit of a dirty word in recent years, but I feel like PUP are starting to remind me of that band, just for kind of how clever and brilliant they are or were at surprising you between albums. So yeah, I think this is a great album, and I think PUP are definitely right up there as one of my favourite bands.
As I said, I was very pleasantly surprised. Having no window of reference, having not really listened to any of their stuff, I thought this album was fantastic. Like I said, there's so much depth, so much texture to all of the songs. You know, they're not just a straight up punk band. There's, I mean, a lot of ingenuity in all of these tracks, and it's so refreshing. And I mean, I think that there's loads in here just to keep your attention. There's no low points at all. Like it isn't. You can't say like, well, okay, you know, how many tracks are there? 12 songs. Sorry, if you include the kind of the interludes. And, you know, by and large, you get a decent album. You maybe like 4 or 5 songs. All of these are, as you said, we could pick out every song as a standout track. So yeah, I mean, I know. Well, should I tell you what I've given it as a rating?
Yes.
Because I think I already know what you're going to rate it as, I think. So I've given it a strong 9 or 10 out of 10.
Yeah. I've gone straight in with a 10. And I was kind of hovering on a 9 because I was like, I don't know, but the more that I listen
the reasoning,
to it,
I suppose. Yeah.
I was kind of like, the more I listen to it, the more like I find these little bits that I sort of cling on to, and that's the sign of a great album. It's like every time you listen to it, you find something new to enjoy. And I was kind of hovering on a 9. I was like, why am I giving it a 9? Just fucking give it a 10. Like, get over it. And like, I mean, more.
To mention Honenbarra, sure, they contacted us being like, give us a 10 out of 10, you cowards.
It was like, they just
quite funny because they were kind of poking fun. Obviously, I'd in a nice way. Like we tried to translate some of the song titles, and they were like, "Yeah, you're right. That does stand for I Hear or I Want or whatever it was." And also, it is a tale of the Monkey King discovering something or other. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think I messaged them back and said, "Oh, thanks for getting in touch.
Album.
It's a really great album." And the boy was like, "Give it a 10 then, you cowards." I was like,
"Yeah,
it's funny as fuck." So I'm just going to get over myself and give this a 10. And
bam.
I mean, I think Morbid Stuff is a near perfect record, and I would give that a 10 out of 10. I mean, it made it onto like my top 20 albums of all time after having had it for 9 months or something. And I think this is just as good, and in many ways it's better. So I can't give it anything else but a 10 out of 10, I don't think.
Good man. It's going in. The Hall of Fame.
It's going into the Hall of Fame. What a band. What a band. Alright, so that was The Unravelling of Pup the Band by PUP.
All your friends, they hate my guts. They only listen to noise punk or nothing. And when your motor died, so did I.
screaming.